So we're now going to look at a model for time management and prioritization. It's commonly known as Eisenhower's matrix, as Dwight D. Eisenhower, the US president, was considered to have used a criteria of importance and urgency when looking at his schedule and his prioritization lists. So he was also famous for quoting that plans are nothing. Planning is everything. So really keep that in your mind, that planning things well is absolutely half the battle won already. A couple of questions to think about as we go through this process as well. How do you plan? What is the quality of your planning? So are you planning well as it stands? And how is your planning communicated to the people around you? So do people know your process for planning? Do people know what you're going to be doing in a day, a week, or a month? And how well do you know their plans as well? So we're going to take a look at the model itself in this first video. And Joanna, I'm going to hand over to you to maybe give us a brief description of the model we can see there, please.
Yeah. So the matrix is a method of prioritizing according the two axes of urgent and important. And we have 4 quadrants here. Top left corner, important but not urgent tasks. Top right corner is important and urgent. So we see the fire burning there. Bottom left corner is not important and not urgent. And we will look at that trash can in a minute. Why is there a trash can there? And bottom right, urgent, not important. And we have 3 acronyms here. So MBP means my boss's problem. SEP means somebody else's problem. And NMP means not my problem. But the most important question here is, what is my prioritization criteria? For example, I can prioritize according to what's easiest or least expensive, or what shows most return on investment, what my boss will like best, etc. So, Tim, how do we define what's important?
As you just said, what's important may very well depend on what your boss says is important. Yeah? For example, your boss or your organization says the most important thing are the bugs in the software. The most important thing is quick revenue quickly from existing customers. The most important thing is a new customer that will keep us going for the long term. The most important thing is filling in the data to this reporting system so that we can report our results to our stakeholders. Definitely first point of call in the question of what's important is thinking about what the organization around you thinks is important, what your direct boss thinks is important as well. On a more intrinsic level, what's important for you is very much described by those 2 top quadrants. For sure, the fires that are fighting or the fires that are burning, they're really important because they're burning. And you have to deal with them quickly. So that top right-hand corner of urgency and importance is going to take up a lot of your time because you just need to get it done. You probably don't have a great deal of time for high levels of quality when you're stuck in that space. But that's one way of looking at the topic of importance. If it's burning, it's important. So we just have to drop everything else and get that done. The top left-hand quadrant, the important stuff, but not urgent. You can see the eye looking into the future. And beneath that eye are 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, 5, 6 points. And these are longer-term topics that are important for you, which do not have a deadline at the moment. Maybe it's an 8-month, a 12-month, a 15-month deadline. It's a big project. It's important to schedule it right, important to plan it right. And as a leader, important to communicate those things, because in the ideal world, you would start bringing your people into those topics so that they can really help you with them. Yeah. So there is an ideal world of the time management matrix, which is where I can use my people to help me achieve my important but not urgent tasks, and they begin growing as a result of that. You spoke to us a lot about leading with questions in a different set of films, Joanna. The ideal world of coaching and delegation is getting people to do stuff which is really important for you in the long term, but doesn't have fires burning around it and really develop skills at the same time. What about that waste paper basket? You said you would come back to that one.
The not important, not urgent quadrant. In the ideal world, we would remove these tasks completely and they should go in the trash. But in reality, the key is to recognize what in your working methods takes time. For example, checking email, social media, procrastination, and just be aware of that.
There are so many examples of things that we do which you then identify later are a time waster. I lived for years clearing out my inbox and having a completely clean inbox. And I was very, very proud of it. For the past 3 years, my inbox has got thousands and thousands of messages in it because I've stopped clearing it out because I realized that I was spending so much time on clearing out my inbox. It became clear to me that that was one of the things that was taking time away from me and became demotivational. I used to work very hard at creating an Excel sheet to have a yearly overview of all of my engagements and workshops, color-coded, etc. I spent hours with this Excel sheet until somebody told me, why are you doing that? Don't you have all of that in your calendar, in your email related calendar? And so I was running two systems at the same time with different purposes, but one of them didn't actually have a point. So the leader's job within the context of this particular quadrant is for sure understanding your own areas where you waste time potentially, but also, thinking about the people that you work with and identifying things that they do where you have questions, honest questions. Why are you doing that? What value does that bring? What's the purpose of that? Mike, do you do anything that is a time waster?
I drink a lot of coffee, Tim. I think this is a really common one. I mean, because especially in a larger office, for example, back where I used to work, I worked on the fifth floor of this building, but on the ground floor was a Costa, and it was subsidized, so it was reasonably cheap. And at some point, I built a habit of going down to that Costa every single day with a colleague, and it was a 5-minute coffee break has turned into a 30-minute coffee break. So for me, that was a personal one. Of course, cigarette breaks can be a significant one for some people. Certainly easier said than done to reduce those, but it's important to really recognize how much of your time is being consumed with those, because colleagues of mine who had cigarette breaks, that was often a 20 to 30-minute endeavor 2 or 3 times a day. As well. So yeah, breaks where you're having coffee or cigarettes or just going to the water fountain and having a chat. Meetings, we highlight this quite often. How many times have you been in a meeting where you don't see any particular value of you being there? You're not quite sure why you're invited. It's an hour of your time. And you're sitting there thinking, I could be doing something much more valuable with this. Mm-hmm. So we really, with things like that, even we really recommend, the meeting owner should answer the question of why you are invited. And if they can't answer that, then there's a really good point to say they shouldn't have invited you. But you can ask the question and just check and say, where is the value for this for me? And really want to be clear on that. Calls, as you said, emails. I'm not too bad with emails, but instant messaging as well. You have internal systems with Teams, or you might use a bunch of other platforms for that. Sometimes you can get stuck into, the nitty gritty and the real details of a problem, but it takes 10 times longer than just solving what needed to be solved in the first place. So that for me was something where a lot of time was spent. I'm also quite analytical. So yeah, the details are important for me, but at some point it's, there's not much return on the effort you're putting in.
I have a time waster that is not completely dependent on me. So if I get interrupted from doing something, it takes me a long time to refocus. So if I have to take away my attention from what I'm doing and pay attention to the person that is interrupting me, then it takes a long time for me to go back to the task I was working on. And I was actually curious if this is only my case or if it's a common issue for people. And I stumbled upon a study, a recent one, that said that when you get interrupted, you need around 20 something minutes to get back on the task you are working on, which was a very interesting insight for me.
20 minutes. That's insane. For sure, there are systems and mechanisms of approaching this. I work with one leader who bought everybody a pair of Hello Kitty headphones, and when those Hello Kitty headphones were on, do not disturb them. So it was a very specific method. They use the headphones for calls and things as well. But when the headphones were on, please do not disturb. When the door is closed, don't disturb. When the red flag is up on the desk, don't disturb. Yeah. And so they had mechanisms within the open plan office for please do not disturb me. I'm in the flow. I'm doing something at the moment. And for sure, it is your problem. At the end of the day, you can create an environment, or you need to create an environment where you are not disturbed until the point where somebody comes and disturbs you, and then you can't do anything with it at all. My boss's problem, somebody else's problem, not my problem. Topics get cascaded through an organization. Somebody else doesn't want to do them, so they give them to you or try to give them to you. So if your job is giving service, then, it's not in that quadrant. Then it's up in the firefighting piece. It's just one of the things that you have to do. So you do it to the best of your ability. But there are a lot of people on this planet who say yes to things that are not really their job. I read a little thing about Warren Buffett, and he said, say no to 80% of the stuff that comes through your door. The art of business is the art of saying no to everything. Yeah, well, not everything, but being really choosing the stuff that you say yes to. And this piece down here is that from an organizational perspective, it's identifying the things in the organization that do waste time and trying not to accept those. Yeah.
So the model hopefully is clear. We have this urgent along the x-axis and important on the y-axis, and it's divided into those main 4 quadrants. So the first thing, of course, to do with this is to fill out this matrix for yourself. In the next video, we're going to look at how else direct and lateral leaders can use this matrix. But it's so important to get a picture of where your time is being spent, and are you happy with how much time is in each quadrant, especially that top left one, because within the top left quadrant lies your long-term strategic goals, relationship management and building, training, development, all of those kinds of things are in that quadrant that is often overlooked. But before we move on, Tim, I think you maybe have a story to tell us.
Oh, yeah, the bucket and the rock story, and it actually goes in line with your final comments there. The stuff in the top left quadrant are big topics. They should be motivational. They should be things that you really want to achieve, and they should be things by which you will measure yourself. Yeah, nobody else is going to measure these things until they become specific programs, but there should be, ways where you say, in 1 year's time, in 15 months' time or so, I will be successful because I will have done these things, and they will have impact. There is the analogy of the bucket with the rocks. The teacher comes into the class and puts a bucket on the desk at the front of the class, and he fills the bucket full of sand. And then he says, he fills it all the way up to the top full of sand. He says, is the bucket full? And the kids say, yes, it's full. So then he gets liters and liters of about 3 or 4 liters of water and pours it on top of the sand. He says, is the bucket full? Yes, the bucket's full. Then he gets all of the gravel and pours it on top, and it's already overflowing from the bucket. He says, is the bucket full? Can we fit anything else in? And the kids are loving it because the desk is wet, the gravel's all over the floor, and they can see the big rocks on the side, which haven't even been brought into the picture yet. And so the message is, getting all of the small stuff in at the beginning doesn't help you with the big stuff. So then he changes it again, puts the big rocks into the bucket so that they all fit in. And he says, is the bucket full? They say, well, it's full of big rocks. And then he pours in the gravel, shakes it, pours in the sand, shakes it, gets all of the kids over to help him shake it, and then pours all of the water in on the top. And it all fits in, which means beginning with the big topics at the beginning means that you will get those big topics done. They'll be addressed, they'll be planned, they'll be scheduled, and not procrastinating with them, but setting aside time for them, as we'll look in the next couple of clips, is key. As a leader, are you helping yourself and your organization and your people to focus on those larger topics and give them the quality and the quantity of time that they need to get addressed over the long term? In our world, nobody actually uses Eisenhower's matrix. Well, some people do, but not very many. But a time management system, whatever it is, whether it's an agenda at the beginning of a meeting, which you discuss with all of the people coming to it, as you said, Mike, that's a time management system. Whether it's a planning process at the beginning of an agile and scrum 2-3 week period of time, it's a time management system. Whether it's simply a to-do list, which you go through and then allocate certain amounts of time and importance based on whatever criteria, it's your time management system. And this time management system is important for the individual, but also important for the leader as a mechanism to get people doing stuff that are moving in the direction that they want to go.